All right, Don, welcome to Phoenix, man.
Good to be here. Good to be back.
So we got quite a crowd. Our members-only crew is growing.
I mean, your members-only crew is larger than like the entire membership of Turning Point the first time.
That's
I
right.
When this would have been a big turnout back in like 16 for.
Oh yeah, the first event you spoke at was our Winter in West Palm Beach event in Palm Beach. This was like the combined attendance of that entire event.
And by the way, by political standards, that was huge, so
That's
to speak,
right.
with a capital Y. But it's grown a lot.
It has. So Don, there's so much to kind of walk through. Let's go back to what you called day one, what we called the new day one, January 7th, 2021.
Yeah.
It looked as if the Trump movement was over. We were put in exile. You never gave up. We never gave up. And now here we are today where everyone acts as if it was an obvious foregone conclusion that we were going to take back the White House. Take us back in time. Walk us through the most amazing political comeback in American history.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. I mean, everyone was like, "Well, I was there in 16 and 15 and whatever." It's like, well, where were you in January 7th? Because there's multiple day ones. If you were at both of those places, that's pretty great. And that's really the applicant pool of who we're looking at right now. I mean, the amount of people who, jumped ship on January 7th, and Trump never had a chance on back in 15, zero chance of winning a primary, zero chance of beating Hillary Clinton. He was definitely getting impeached twice. He just kept coming back. Watching all of these people write you off so many times, it's actually great motivation, but I think that's what's so much more effective about this administration, this cabinet, the people that are involved. We just know. In 16, we didn't know anything. We didn't know it. The first night my father spent in Washington, D.C. was the night he moved into the White House. We were trusting, Krispy Kreme Christie. That was our closest person that may have known something about Washington, and maybe he did, or maybe it was he knew something bad, and so it's just so different, which gives me so much hope. It's why you see people trying so desperately now, but it's not working anymore. Once you got a hold of X, and watching the left right now. Oh my God, it's a right-wing platform. It's 50-50. You're just used to having an entire echo chamber to yourselves. You're not used to having to argue. You're not used to having to actually formulate an opinion, because whatever you said was just the gospel, and as long as you repeat the narrative, you were rewarded with followers and likes. It's just so different now. The people are involved. I mean, when, as we've been saying, like, we are the media now.
Yes.
We're also the government now. I mean it. I mean, you look at what's happening in the last few weeks. I mean, 2-3 weeks ago, Pete Hegseth was dead according to the media, and then MAGA got involved. People were vocal. They started calling out sort of the more RINO-leaning members of the Republican Senate, and all of a sudden everyone's back in line. And I call it ETP, education through pain. It's Charlie.
I like that.
It is, but that's what it is. It's not in the physical sense of the word. Because some schmuck on CNN's going to say he's inciting violence. You know the deal. And so we did that. We weren't able to do that in the past, right? Even if we had our voices out there, where they were suppressed so badly, while the sort of popular Democrat narrative was enhanced artificially. Now, with a level playing field, we can do that, and we can make these, representatives actually represent us for a change. I know that, they're used to doing the bidding of the oligarchs in the D.C. swamp. That's gone right now, and that's why it's so fundamental. We just keep it up. You
Yes.
can't do that. And when people, well, this one's over, and if Hegseth would have rolled, they would have set their targets on the next one. It would have been a dynamic shift for the next 4 years. But watching, not just us, but all of you. Get after it, get involved, call these people out, whether it was physically, whether it was on social, whether it was on the media. We turned a narrative around in like 3 or 4 days.
Yep.
That the experts, we all been hearing about experts for a while. You can't be an expert, by the way, if you haven't been right in about a decade. That you should lose your expert status. But the experts were saying, there's blood in the water, this thing's over. And, the base stuck by their people. And when we do that and we become unafraid and we fight back, we win. And it's that simple.
And so I want to be very clear. We said this, and Don and I were part of a few people that held the line for Pete Hegseth. And that's not over yet. But that was a very telling moment, because if we would have just kind of surrendered, it could have derailed the entire Trump presidency. and I hope you guys understand that the whole direction of the Trump presidency was in suspension. I said, and Don echoed, and vice versa, that if you are a Republican senator like Joni Ernst or one of these others, and you voted for Joe Biden's Department of Defense director, and you won't vote for Donald Trump's DOD director, we will primary you and remove you from office immediately.
We're actually watching that play out again. I mean, with the CR. I mean, you
Yes.
took a bill that the swamp would have gladly signed that had a lot of stuff that was bad, and in 3 hours that thing was dead on arrival. And again, because of you guys calling it out, we now have the ability to assess information rapidly. Not pass it to figure out what's in it. We've heard that for far too long. Now we can actually see it with a level playing field. On social, we're actually all able to then chime in. And, in 24, 48 hours, we got a new bill that got rid of a lot of that pork and a lot of that waste and all of the things that everyone here voted against on November 5th.
It's funny, they have a comparison right now on Twitter, is that the other one was 1,500. The new CR is like 3 pages long, which is the way it should be, by the way, is that if you're going to do a CR and you're going to do debt limit increase, you don't need 900 different pages to get there. Don, what is it about this retiring Republican ideology from some of these senators where they feel as if it's okay to give Joe Biden what he wants, but not Donald Trump? It's not easily understood. Help me understand the psychology behind that.
Am I allowed to say it's like a mindset? Can
Okay.
I say that on the Charlie Kirk show? I'm not quite as evangelical as Charlie, so I'm gonna go. No, it is there. You know what it is? I've been saying it. It's if you're a weak Republican in D.C., it's an easy existence. You can be like 90% of the way there, 80% of the way there. As long as you give up when the Democrats really need it or want it, they leave you alone. They don't show up in front of your house. You're not getting the hate, mail, editorial from the Washington Post. And so for a lot of these people, they get to D.C. and they forget about the people who actually sent them there and what they actually represent. I've been in the room. I've seen it 1,000 times. I'll go do events for these people, try to help them get elected because not in all cases, but usually a weak Republican is still better than a D. So you go there, you hear the things that they're saying to the people. I'm like, you know what, this guy's not going to be that bad, or this woman's not going to be that bad. They're going to be fine. It's maybe not exactly what I want. And then they get to D.C. and it's a totally transformed individual. They feel they really have to answer to the swamp far more than the people that they represent. And again, that's what that dynamic shift is all about right now. Because the people they represent are actually paying attention. They've been lied to forever. They no longer just have this blind faith, that the person who they heard speak 2 days before, telling them everything they wanted to hear, checkpoint by checkpoint, is actually going to do it in D.C. because guys like us are actually out there calling them out. They see it and they're saying, wait a second, we're putting up their numbers in D.C. and you get a couple thousand calls from your constituency if you're a congressman, or a lot more than that if you're a senator, and all of a sudden they realize, hey, the jig is up. They're on to us. We can't get away with it anymore. If you're going to face accountability, for me, when I get a hate piece from the Washington Post or the New York Times, I look at that as a win. It means I'm over the target. It means I'm actually being effective. They don't view it that way. We've not been playing the same game for far too long. We've been playing T-ball while the Democrats have been playing hardball. I'm fine with either game, but we have to be playing the same game.
And I think it's changing. I mean, with people like you, J.D. Vance. How great is J.D. Vance, by the way? Isn't it just amazing? And before I go any further, Don deserves a lot of credit for pushing for J.D. Vance. And understand, the easy way out would have been a typical D.C. Republican. And Don, you pushed for JD. Why did you push so hard for JD? I mean, I did a small little thing, but I mean, you went all in. If it was politics as a poker game, Don took all of his chips. Is that right, Don?
Early.
And you said,
the hand haven't been even dealt yet.
Yes.
I was like, I'm in. You know what? I got to know him. It was sort of interesting. I read his book when it first came out. And I was like, wow, as you started seeing more, we need more people like this. Then it sort of went a different way. And I actually got to know him through some friends of ours. Started hanging out with him. I'm like, man, this guy's like a great talent, just totally gets it, brilliant, just an incredible upbringing, hasn't forgotten that upbringing, which is what so many people, tend to do in politics, or once they reach some sort of level of success, got to know him really well. And basically, I sort of did the pre-endorsement endorsements. It's sort of the unofficial pre-endorsement. Got to be a little careful getting ahead of DJT. But I did that in his Republican primary when he was just running for Senate.
I remember.
And then, you, me, Tucker, I mean,
there was a small band of
There was
us.
a small band that just sort of, really pushed to make that happen. Because again, I think we recognized the talent. We had the bandwidth and the time to be able to spend there and figure out what this meant. And once I saw his performance in the Senate, I was like, I mean, there's not many senators you'd want to share a foxhole with, certainly, even on the Republican side. But, this was the one guy that I was like, wow, like that's someone we can build a party around. Because for me, it isn't just about Trump. Like, I actually believe in this stuff. I've been a lifelong conservative. I've always wanted, I want this to continue beyond Trump. It's just not 4 more years, great, and then we're back to like the Mitt Romney, Liz Cheney party. I know. That's yes. I am saying what you're saying. And so it was really about establishing that bench, because that's what scared me. When I looked at 16 to 20, it was like, well, what is next? There was no real standout. There was no this. I mean, I was sort of joking. We were all joking at the time. It was like, even for the 2024 primaries, like before all that happened and the early stuff, like, I was first or second. I was like, well, that's great. I appreciate the compliment, but like, we need more than like,
Don 2028. What do you think?
Oh God, yeah.
No,
Well,
JD 2028,
yeah.
JD 2032, Don 2036. Now we got it all figured out. Okay.
Well, I mean, it was funny. We were joking around in a text thread earlier. There's some poll came out. It was basically for the 2028. It's JD, then me, basically dominating the entire
And
field
then
right now.
DeSantis at 4%.
I don't know where he was, but it was a far cry. But
it was
listen,
very
it's
small.
just important to understand, like, MAGA is the party now. That's not Trump. That's just people who believe in putting America first. That's what it has to be. There's not a Republican Party anymore in anything other than name. That's maybe what we still call each other. It's about being America first, and like, sort of feels like that's the way it should have always been.
So Don, we look at this agenda and the team that we've put together. Can you speak about some of these new arrivals in the last 12 months? Yeah. We had America Fest last year. You spoke. You gave a great speech. But I want to go through the list. A year ago, Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy, and Elon Musk were not yet part of kind of our team.
Yeah.
Amazing a difference a year makes, right, everybody?
Yeah.
Now, not only are they part of our team, Elon Musk lives at Mar-a-Lago now. He gets his mail.
Yeah.
Can you speak that? Like, he gets his mail delivered
he's there
at
all the time. I mean, he's getting. It's amazing. He's there with his son X, and it's really sort of funny. I got sort of a great compliment from him early on in the first couple of weeks of the transition. I was in a meeting, and I'm the guy that sort of takes some pretty aggressive stances, and a room of people that are just a little bit more cautious than me, and like 7 times he was like, yes, exactly what we have to do. And it was just great to see people finally, again, willing to fight. A guy like that, maybe one of the greatest minds ever, certainly of our generation, willing to take the time to help set these things up right, to be able to look into the inefficiencies. A guy that's, done more in space than NASA, that had a 75-year head start. I want that guy involved in looking at the rest of the apparatus of government. And so that was great. But no, you're right. I mean, I guess I had a pretty big part in Tulsi and Bobby as well. Just
talk about that.
Well, so I have a friend actually, business partner, Omid Malik, former Democrat, got sort of blindsided by a lot of the insanity of the left. Woke up, became a donor of ours in 2020. Became a real good friend of mine. Took a couple conservative sort of parallel economies companies public with me. All these things we were fighting, and he was like, "Listen, as a former Democrat, I want you to know I'm friends with some of these people, and you'd actually get along with them really well. There's a lot more that we share in common than, we may not agree on everything, but a lot more." And he sort of started having me sort of back channeling with Bobby when I saw what the Democrats sort of were trying to do, which was like ostracize him from their side, create a cudgel against Trump, try to split that vote. I'm like, DJT actually probably agrees with 90% of what he's saying on so many of these issues. I know they had a history in the past. I was like, let's just do this. And so, I basically got Susie Wiles involved and my father, but basically no one else, because if anyone else gets involved, you understand what happens, right? The leaks happen on purpose. Then they use that leak to try to create a divide, then they can never possibly get them together, which is why that didn't leak.
I didn't. For the record, I didn't leak.
You didn't leak. Charlie was one of the few confidants. I was like, listen, I think I'm landing this plane. Like, I got this thing. He was like, no. You called me the day before. You're like, you don't have this thing. I was like, you let me.
I doubted. I was a doubting Thomas. I was like, Don, you're calling the shot. You're like, it's done.
It's done. It's done. And the next day we did that. And what was so great about it for me was how well it was received. Like, people actually wanted this stuff. And like, when you talk to Bobby, and again, when I first. I'm an attack dog, right? When he first came out, I was like, I'm going to attack. And then I got to know him and started listening to the points. I'm like, this is exactly who I'd want at HHS. Or, looking into the food. And it's again, create the transparency. Let people, the biggest thing that DOGE can do isn't even the action. It's showing the American people the trillions of dollars we have wasted on nonsense, on garbage. Once they do that, once the American people have an understanding, it won't continue. But it's the stuff that happens, behind closed doors that no one really understands, and they just assume it's being spent well. All of these things, and basically the same thing happened, with Tulsi, who I think will also do a great job there. So it's great to have this sort of, large tent. We've always talked about that for a while. We've welcomed so many, and we've seen that play out certainly in the electorate. But watching the Democrats basically, eat their own for anyone who's not 100% in line with their insane talking points. They'd lost their minds, and they killed anyone who was reasonable, who didn't just buy into the narrative. And when you look at the sort of the diverse parties that are involved now, the background, I mean, how many former Democrats that have just woken up that are now a part of this administration? I mean, it's incredible. I mean, this is actually a much more real representation of America than anything the Democrats have put up in maybe ever.
So I want to open up to the audience in a second, Don, but I'm going to ask about just the questions I get a lot about your father, about how he operates, because it really is unlike anything we've ever seen. And I mean from the stamina to the capacity to not just campaign, but just this life force. And I mean, you've seen it your entire life. I mean, one story that I could tell just from 3 days, we were hosting President Trump back-to-back in Georgia and then Vegas. I did a couple campus events in between, a couple red eyes, and I was, like, destroyed. Yeah. And President Trump had, like, 4 campaign events a day, went from Georgia to obviously Palm Beach, to Arizona, to Nevada, did 2 events in Nevada, then went and did Rogan's show, then sent to Michigan, came back to 3 a.m. He ended up spending 72 hours awake straight before the election. Is that an exaggeration, Don?
No.
He did not sleep for 3 days straight. I mean, this guy is 78 years old. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable, right?
It is. I've seen it sort of my whole life. I used to get, when I was younger and dumber, maybe a little wilder on the weekends, I could get a call at like a Saturday morning at 5 a.m. Let's just say I was probably not in the best shape of my life at 5 o'clock in the morning, in my early 20s on a Saturday. And, you'd be like, hey, why aren't you in the office? I'm like, smart ass Don. It's like, why aren't you in the office? He's like, I am in the office. I'm standing in your office right now, and that's why I know you're not here. I'm like, give me 20 minutes. I'll be there. It's gonna hurt. No, but you saw that with Rogan. I saw it. I saw it just the day before the election. I mean, I consider myself a reasonably high energy individual. We've seen what happens to low energy individuals. I'd get thrown out the window of Trump Tower. That doesn't work in our family. And the 2 days before the election, I watched him literally pull 2 all-nighters in a row, and I was there, and he was doing most of the speaking. This was actually, I'm the guy that unlike most in politics, like I don't just show up to be in the selfie in the background to be able to show people that I was doing something. I say, let him do his thing. You don't need 2 Trumps in a room. Send me where he can't be. I'm not looking for credit. Like I don't do that. But like the last basically 2 days, I wanted to be there just because of the historical moment. I just wanted to, and we had done everything we needed to do. And I'm watching him do this, and literally 2 all-nighters in a row, and I'm dying. And he's playing like loud music on the plane at 4 a.m. I'm like, I just want to die. I'm like, what is going on here? And then I'm watching. We land. It's 6 a.m. I get home. I take a shower. I'm gonna go try to take a nap for 2 hours before I get back on TV. And 7 a.m. I'm seeing him on TV, and he's just going on through the day. And then we go into election night, and it's in another night where he left the the auditorium at like 5, 6 in the morning.
72 hours.
He's 78 years old. Like, I'm 46, and I'm like, I'm dying. And I don't think anyone's ever accused me of being low energy. So it's like, that's a pretty solid benchmark. I mean, it's just, it is.
Where does that come from, Don? Is that?
I think he's just always had it. He's never been much of a sleeper. He's always been, passionate. He's a true competitor, and he actually does better. Most people fail under pressure. He's one of those guys that just does better, right? We talked about resilience when we started this, and when you look at the times he's been counted out, whether it was in business, whether it was he just continues to be able to fight back, and when he's put under that pressure, he just does better. I don't think we'll ever see anything like that in politics again.
Do you think that the 4 years off that we had, exile, was good for us?
100%. Like, it's not even close. And trust me, as one of the most subpoenaed human beings in the history of the world, I don't know how many people. I don't think there's too many people that have done more than 50 hours of congressional testimony than me. So, like, that was another. The 4 years of hell that we went through, whether it's the lawfare, everything, the lawfare, the exile, the attempt of the swamp to push us out, the attempt of the Republican Party to push, sort of MAGA out. That was brutal. It sucked. But I think the reality is, had we just stayed in office in 2020, you would have had the same guys that were there who didn't really belong, that were, some of whom are fine. There may be 2 or 3 guys that were great, but like not many. You would have had those same people that were the unelected bureaucrats. They just know better. So they're going to subvert the will of the people. They're going to subvert the duly elected president of the United States. They'll kick the can down the road. They're going to slow roll it. Now we're starting from scratch. We're starting from scratch with people who are the true loyalists, the people who get it. The people, the concentric circles of politics are interesting, right? There's like loyal, there's competent, and there's a very small intersection where those things overlap.
That's true.
We actually know who. And listen, I appreciate the loyalty is incredible. I love that, but like, doesn't mean you should be like, somewhere in the chain of command. Not, everyone who's loyal thinks they should be, the Secretary of State, or, it doesn't always work that way, guys. I love you, but like, let's be real. Now we know where that concentric circle is, and putting these people into those positions is so powerful. I think, again, you see the reaction from the swamp, both the Democrats and even some of the establishment Republicans. When they saw this going on, they're losing their minds because they understand this is the one true threat to their hegemony. I think in hindsight, they're looking back and be like, you know what, we should have just let it go. Joe Biden didn't exactly do a lot for the Democrat Party. Running Kamala Harris in sort of a coup probably didn't do a lot for the Democrat Party. I think it actually did us a lot of favors. It opened up a lot of eyes to the insanity, to the lies. They were able to cover that up so much more effectively in the past. That's done. And so, I'm actually like the most grateful guy that we actually did it this way than just had an 8-year straight term, because I think what we can do now is exponential. What we can do now, could forever change the game, and that's something that's grossly needed.